As I don't like silent call without video. I agree, Barry. I would have said something like "buongiorno." I mean, I'm not sure about the writing, but more to say it. But I use Google Translate, and here we go. I never heard about Buen pomeriggio.
Google Translate can be your friend. Sometimes Google Translate is not your friend. You never know.
Exactly. I would have. That's the reason why I put Google Translate between parentheses, right? Just to be sure that I offend nobody.
Yes, we can be on video, Eric. While we wait, I'm gonna ping Ori directly.
And by what I've seen in a couple of interims with, I don't know, 10 people or so, people keep the video and the audio all the time on.
Yeah, it's fine.
Up to you, right? It's an art meeting. I mean,
yeah. I'm
hosted
not
in
art anymore.
True.
Okay. Pinged Ori. But yeah, I guess this is just quite an informal session of anyone is willing to come in and ask questions. I haven't received, you were asking, Eric, I haven't received any question in advance, so it's really up to whoever is here to jump in and ask any questions, and we will answer it to the best of our abilities. And Eric has also come in, I guess, last second, so thank you for joining. Warren was also planning to come in, and then we have Barry, who is very experienced as well. And yeah,
I'm looking at the attendance, the attendees, and looking for fresh meat for the IESG, and I'm not seeing a Christian is a new father. He's probably not going to do it. Dhruv is on the IAB. Andy's been around, but where's all the new people who might be? Yeah.
we're waiting for them. Christian is not actually here. He's on Zulip, so it's probably just in the chat.
Oh yes,
from the previous
I
session.
see that.
So
It just says Zulip user.
yeah.
Zulip is keeping the session from session to session.
I mean, if you don't log out or like if you don't close the thing, you stay in there. So lots of people
You
who
are
are
a
not
real
actually
art
there.
AD. You are a real art AD.
Because I know that.
I'm just below, right? So on the IP and sub-IP layer. And also, it's pretty early in the morning for most of the US people, while not too late for Asia.
And another thing I want to mention is we will have sort of like the same session at the next IETF. That was the plan with Ori. Will be me and Ori, and then whoever other ADs, previous or current, that are free to join. And that one will not be recorded. This one is. So.
Yeah, and I would suggest as well to redo the theme in July when we'll be in Madrid. I mean, around this time frame, because that's basically when people step forward, right, or need to be pushed forward. Because Andy, it's a very enjoyable job, demanding, very demanding, sometimes stressful and tiring, but so rewarding because you're doing something positive.
Yeah. But you're running again, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a drug as well, right? So.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not. So as you know, I'm stepping down in March, and I'm definitely gonna miss it. It's gonna be being part of this team has been really rewarding, and I definitely get that people like, even though it's it can be quite a hard job, but
you have nothing for nothing, right? So if it's not hard, it's not worth the pain. I mean, we have such a saying in French. It's not painful, it's not worth it. And yeah, it's not only about the team spirit, like because I mean, obviously in your job you get other team spirit, but it's really, it was Spencer saying, do the right thing, and as the mentor, right? It's the mantra. Sorry, it's really what cares.
Yeah. Do you miss it, Barry? Or do you feel like
Yeah,
you?
sorry, my hotel room just has started developing this horrible noise. I don't know if you can hear it. I have to call maintenance about it, so I'm going to have to
Oh,
just stay
okay.
muted for a bit.
No worries. Okay. So, Dhruv and Andy, if you have any questions or are curious about anything, feel free to jump in. And yeah.
No questions. I was looking for other people's questions and seeing
Okay.
what's the discussion like. But since it's popped up in my calendar, I was like, yeah, let's just click on it and see.
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
We don't
always
see you as much anymore when you're not in the,
yeah, the
our.
liaison part was really nice. I had a good start in the leadership by being a liaison. I think that was pretty good to see the both sides very, very quickly and understanding how the two work together. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
And you change room as well.
be a liaison to IIB if you guys are ever listening. I think it's a fun role.
I wanted this time, but it was John Scudder got it, so we were the two of us. I am the liaison to the tools team. So, and by the way, Andy, you are running for art, and it's obviously not an interview or whatever, right? But what are your expectation or your hope or your fear?
I think fear would be too much work.
Yeah.
That probably would be it. The really the only, I mean, the reason I'm running is because I guess the short answer is I believe in the IETF and its mission. So and other than that, I don't really have like a specific agenda. The since we're just talking in general, not specifically about art, I do have a question about how people recruit working group chairs, because over the last year, I've attempted to talk several people into being a working group chair, and it is very, very difficult. And these are people who I know have been around the IETF for a while. I understand how someone who's brand new to the IETF would be intimidated by it, but I specifically asked two people I know who have been coming to the IETF for probably 5 or 6 years. One of whom has many drafts, or actually has an RFC now to his name, and is a shepherd on many documents. So, like, it seemed like the natural progression for him would be to step up to a chairship, and he said no. Now, one of the things I'm running into is when I talk to people is they don't get support from their own leadership, their own corporate leadership, and that's I think a big problem. When I was current job I'm in now, they're very supportive of working with the IETF, but my last employer was not. Even though they send some people to the IETF, they did not view IETF participation as anything that could help you in getting a promotion, and therefore no one was interested in doing it. And so I think that's maybe one of the things we ought to work on, is talking to people who run companies and say, if you're putting together a promotional packet for someone, being a leader in this organization is it shows that you can get volunteers to do things, and it shows that that you're willing to step up and I hate to be cliche here, but work for the greater good. Uh, I don't know. That's one of the things I've noticed, that a lot of people I ask, they're not interested because it doesn't do anything for them from a career perspective.
So as nobody replies, right? So I think, Andy, you are right to the point. And So first, don't feel too much about the time commitment. I mean, you will be spending at least 1/3 of your time, the bare minimum, as an AD, right? Just to be clear. Now, I'm spending as well a few of my time over, I mean, the evening on the Sundays and the weekends when times are low, because I like it, right? So you are really, it's really rewarding because you are doing something for the good of the mankind. I mean, sorry, right? Good of the mankind. It looks like stupid what I'm saying, but I really believe it. Now, recruiting working group chair is kind of okay because it's not so much a time requirement. What I found, specifically in INT, where we have mainly, besides 6 man, which is huge, we have working group that are 20, 30 people. So we know each other in the working group, and it's kind of natural to move from authors to shepherd to working group chair. Now, the thing is that when you create out of above, you need to find chairs. My recipe is, except when it's a very small group, with not a big impact and no real risk, then I'm selecting a good old experimented chair and a brand newcomer. Now, the thing is that in a small group, it's very tough to put the big proponent, the big authors as chairs, because then when you arrive at the working group last call and call for adoption, they need to recuse themselves, right? If you have, I have a working group where I had no way out, right? But that's the fact, where the two chairs are basically big authors, and they need to recuse each other and being the shepherd from each other. I'm not happy with it, obviously, right? But what can I do? But you're right, and I will let. I mean, if you look about the people coming here, right, in the call, I am working for Cisco, which is kind of a big company. Francesca is for Ericsson, Drift and Barry, FutureWare, Huawei, big company. So we see the long term. And this is the pain specifically at the ISG or IEB level, not so much at working group, because honestly, working group chair is not a big time. I mean, I've been working group chair for 10 years or so. Barry, you want to say something, most probably?
Yeah, so on the last point, I was very lucky when I was an area director that FutureWay let me spend essentially all my time doing that job. And that was great because the AD job involves a bunch of stuff that you have to do and then a bunch of other stuff that comes up that some number of area directors need to be able to volunteer for them. And I was able to volunteer for anything because I had the time. And the area directors who were more restricted in time didn't volunteer for as much. So there is some flexibility there. On the chair thing, when I was an AD, I always, as Eric says, I had very little trouble finding people who were willing to be chairs, but there's a lot of tendency to go with the same people all the time. And so my big thing was to look for new people and try to pair up a new person with an experienced person, with the idea that the new person would do most of the work and learn what was going on, and then be the experienced person for the next newbie. I also want, because we're short on women in working group chair positions, I was always looking for women who wanted to be working group chairs, and I found quite a few in my time, and that was good. But yes, I understand the thing that not everybody wants to do the time commitment, and not everybody wants to put a target on their back, and sometimes that's what happens also.
Yeah, and it might be worth mentioning that sometimes chairing in some particular groups it can be very difficult and requires a certain set of capabilities, but other times the work in between meetings is the load is not quite high for working group chairs, so depending on the working group, obviously. So that can be, one can explain that to new chairs that might not have the full vision of what the job is. And that's not really strong arming people into becoming chairs, but like just encouraging them and reassuring them. And as you were saying, both of you, Eric and Barry, like pairing them with more experienced people, that can always help. But Yeah, I think that what we do usually when we don't, we usually have some ideas of some people that could be good, and we try to convince them that it's not that they should be able to do the job, and that shouldn't require too much of their time, and and that we would support them if anything happens, or if it does. But the other thing that we also are doing quite often is call for interest. So hi, Deb. So when when we're looking for someone, we don't have a clear candidate in mind, or we're just trying to reach more people, maybe more people who have not been chairs before, or not the usual suspects, then we call for interest, and we sort of keep track of whoever has shown an interest, and we also try to do it in particular forums to, like we do it in the sisters group, like the women at IETF, to try to get more varied candidate pool. Yeah, I don't know if that was maybe helpful, Andy.
One thing which I wanted to also add was, like, especially in my case, I've been chairing two working groups, and I was a secretary of a working group, and I had the same kind of worries initially, like how much time will it take? Would I be able to do that? Becoming a secretary and getting a full view of everything that happens at the chair's role takes that thing away. And I see, like, lots of our working groups uses it, lots of working groups don't. But I think especially where there is apprehension, asking folks to become like, more shepherding role, asking them to become working group secretaries, getting them a view of what the job involves, is a pretty good things that we might be encouraging to some folks. And one thing is, like, some most working groups, I feel like, we think we need to put the experts in the topic as chairs, and that's usually is not the right strategy. And in my case, I was doing a lot of drafts, and I made a conscious decision that yes, I will take a little backseat, and I will mentor more people who could take over. And I was lucky to find that, and that's when I took the chair role. But I can see, like, where people might be apprehensive if they can't let go of the work that they have already started, and they want to see this to fruition. Asking them to start chairing is sometimes problem. In that case, one approach that could be done is, most of our working groups are sort of interrelated, and asking them to chair another group where they might not be leading it, but they have very good system knowledge, they understand things, what's happening, they participate in those groups. Asking them to chair that group could be a strategy that is worth looking at as well. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think Barry had a good point that sometimes it's putting a target on your back. And I think that's probably why some people get a little bit apprehensive. And I do agree. Having people be a secretary before they become a working group chair means that they get a much fuller view of everything that goes on in the working group before they actually have to step up to making consensus calls and so forth. I don't know. In my view, in my time at the IETF, and I've been working group chair 3 times, that is kind of where all the fun is, if you ask me. Uh, it's not an extreme time commitment, and you get to see a lot of the interactions at all levels of the IETF, and so I think it's actually very enjoyable. And that comes from, I chaired the married working group. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but that was an insane 6 months working group that it was trying to solve the spam problem, and so you can imagine how that went.
And
But
you failed, right? And you failed, just to be clear.
yeah, yes, we failed. But still, I mean, it was a great experience while it lasted. So I don't know. The Like I said, one of the things I'm finding is a lot of people don't want to do it because it is not something that helps their career. And I just think if we could find a way to get organizations that now I admit, like I would assume that some of the more network oriented organizations, companies tend to value participation in the IETF a lot more than others. But I've definitely run into companies where they just don't value it at all. So And therefore the participants are just like, well, anything other than trying to get an RFC with my name on it is a waste of time. So.
And there is currently an ISG initiative to make easy for ARTAREA directors to send thank you, congratulations letters to chairs or people doing an important role at the IETF. Basically, that somebody can forward it to this management. Do you think it will help?
Oh, I absolutely do. Yes, because that if that can go into a promotion packet that has been then being used by a manager or by someone to say, I'm trying to get this employee promoted, that's very helpful, right? So especially if there's names on there from people in other companies as well. So sometimes the name of the IETF doesn't carry the weight it should. Don't ask me why, but it doesn't. But if it's names of people who are associated with other companies, that would definitely help. Yeah, I think that would be very useful.
And by the way, thank you for the input that the company names matter more than the IETF. I mean, this is said, but I can understand the logic behind it. Now, to be honest, it will be kind of challenging because if I write a letter with my Cisco email address, and just taking Cisco as an example, right? Obviously, I'm speaking just for myself. I'm not speaking for Cisco, though. Like pretty much Drew speak for himself and not for Huawei. But interesting thoughts. Okay, thank you so much, by the way, Andy, on this one. Whatever the call is, I got something out of it now.
I think we have to think of it as, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, but it's LinkedIn culture. So where that's how a lot of trade and reputation occurs. So, Ori's here, so now he can take over.
Hi, Ori.
So sorry, guys.
No worries. Is it really early for you?
Andy, just on the other side of it, sometimes somebody who really wants to be a chair, that also is sort of like, oh, why do you really want to be a chair? And is it just for a promotion or that's also a sort of, so we have to find the right balance between that culture. It depends from company to company. And I know where you are coming from. And for those set of people, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But I can also see a flip side of it where somebody just wants to be a chair for the sake of it.
So does that happen a lot?
Some areas, yes. Like the pressure I know that some ADs feel from people that, oh, I've been telling you and you are not encouraging, you're not making folks share. And the AD can tell in some cases that, yes, the motivation is not always the right one.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
So we started, Ori.
Yeah.
We have.
So I didn't have any specific agenda for this. The structure of the AMA is basically to answer questions for whoever shows up, and it helps if you show up when you set up the AMA yourself. So sorry for being basically 30 minutes late to my own session. Yeah, I don't have a specific agenda. This is a recorded session, so it'll be available. The goal with this one was to make it available for folks whose time zone this time wouldn't be friendly to. So,
did you receive any questions beforehand? I didn't get any.
I did not receive any questions beforehand.
Okay.
But the usual question is about, I think, the motivation, the corporate support, because we need to get our salary paid, right? And the time commitment. I mean, all of them are linked together.
Mm.
I mean, this is typically what I talk to people. That's how we get it.
Yes. So I think, what would be helpful would, also it's I'm the IESG liaison to the NOMCOM, but I'm a relatively new area director. So I can generate, hopefully, a more useful recording by interviewing folks who have a little bit more experience than myself. as I think Andy was already asking some questions, so I can ask some questions that I would have wanted to have some wisdom about before I joined. Perhaps we can take it that direction if you guys feel comfortable going that way.
Mm-hmm. I don't feel like you're a new AD anymore, or
Yeah.
you picked up running, so
Yeah, we had this when Spencer joined the IESG. He spent like a year and a half saying he was the new guy and inexperienced. We said, Spencer, you have to stop that now. So Ori, you have to stop that now.
Well, it is something I tell anyone who has the new participant badge. I say, you can go to the mic, you can say anything you want as long as you've got the new participant badge. So hopefully,
well,
And I think that's what
go ahead.
Go on, Francesca. So that's what I say to every new coming AD. You have basically 3 months or 4 months to say whatever you want, make any mistake, try any button you want on data tracker. You have a grace period for 3-4 months. Now, Ori, this grace period is over.
It's
I'm
over.
sorry.
Fair enough.
But
well, I know one thing that, especially for the art area, that folks have been wondering about is, what's the difference between art and wit? Because we've done this area restructuring, and the division of working groups is now a little bit different. What makes a good art area director versus a good wit area director? So that's definitely a topic that I think it would be good to have some discussion about. I'll sort of start by sharing, my view of it. If we look at like the working groups in art and wit, the main ones that move to wit as part of that restructuring are the web technology working groups. And HTTP is not a transport, but a lot of folks may think of it as being sort of very close to one. And what remains within art is, I think formats, codecs, obviously email and calendar, application protocols that have a client-server interaction. Obviously, the regex group is within art, and that's a protocol that helps provisioning numbers and domain names and such. So Francesca, you were there at the beginning of this division. Like, how do you think about the future of like art and wit?
Well, actually, I wasn't there. I was on parental leave. But no, I think this was a division that was started from sort of a load rebalancing, where our topics were coming up on basically every meeting had a couple of or more of buffs on new working groups, and transport was quite a smallest area, and not enough people interested in taking up the AD job. So we also thought like in terms of topics, it made sense to combine those together, as you said. But what I wanted to stress is that this is not a change that is immutable, like that it will be forever like this. Like the ATF evolves through time, and really, I think this is really good thing that we're able to modify sort of the high level structure in the way that makes most sense at the moment. And it has happened before, of course, with the app and RAI and art restructuring. So I think this for now is, the way that that makes most sense, with WIT being sort of like the ops area having two sort of gravity center with the web protocol, web related working groups and the transport working groups. And we will try it out for a while, see how it works. So far, I think it has worked in terms of load balancing for art. And in the end, we have seen that the crowds that used to, in terms of scheduling working groups during the IETF week, etc., that has also worked. It hasn't created any big conflict that shouldn't happen. And so I think this has been a good change. But we will see in the future. I'm not saying, I'm not saying it's gonna be like this forever. I'm just saying this is good for now. And then we will see where more work is gonna be needed and how to structure that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about. One of the roles of the ISG and area directors have is structuring of the areas and structuring of area review teams. And like you said, it's not an immutable thing. It's something that we can make adjustments as needed over time. I see we have some new participants who've joined. It's welcome. The structure of this it's very open, so you're welcome to ask any questions you like, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Mm-hmm. Eric, you mentioned some questions before that are the usual questions you get. Do you want to address from your point of view, or you were just mentioning them? About the time commitment and support from the employer. Eric? Yeah. You're muted. Can't hear you.
There's the difference between an RTD that knows how to mute and unmute and an INTD, right? We just assume it works because it should work. Yeah, the time commitment, as I tried to explain in the beginning, it goes everything between 30% of your time, which is, I think, is the bare minimum. You spend some time on, everyone sees the reviewing the draft, which is, I think, the most visible part of our job. It's time consuming, don't take me wrong, mostly the biggest part, but it's not the only part. And it's typically non-stressful. I mean, there's a big pile of work to do it. It's enjoyable, by the way, after a few while, because at the beginning, you this reference, you need to jump in. I see Ori, because at the end, oh, this one means this one, and this one means, okay, the follow-up on balloting is, I think, more time consuming. When you ballot, for instance, a discuss, it takes not only you're reviewing, you need to double and triple check and quadruple check what you are saying there, because it's very blocking a draft is huge thing. And then after, of course, you need to talk to the AD, to the authors, and it linger in some cases for 2-3 weeks. It's much time consuming, honestly. But for instance, one of the very first thing I have to do as an AD was canceling the Vancouver meeting thanks to COVID. And I can tell you, it's kind of stressful. I still believe it, right? So it was really breaking the heart to this. I mean, it was 1 month before the complete pandemic, but at that point of time, it was unsure. And the same thing for the meeting in IETF 125, right? I mean, everyone knows it was a non-unanimous decision. It takes hours and hours. I think already we were together into the design team, so we get 5 or 6 meetings of 1 hour to decide on the process and so on. So it takes time. And then, of course, we were just talking, Andy, about the working group chairs. Yeah, we need to find, decide what. Even if you trust them, I'm still checking their decision, right? For the call for adoption, for the working group last call, everything is done. It takes time as well. And you need to monitor the list. I mean, I'm very lucky in INT. None of my group is really conflictual. So the buffs are different. The current 2 buffs I have, DM, and I mean, you know it, right, already about DM. And MD space are kind of conflictual. I mean, could derail in something which is conflictual. So you really need to prevent those conflicts upfront, right? Not wait until they are there. So it takes time. So basically, it has 30% as the bare minimum. This is doing at least 50% of the ballot and the review, attending the meetings, and that's it. But you don't take a huge amount of value. In my case, and again, I'm lucky working for a big networking company, I can spend 60% of my time doing this. And Warren is joining us. That's cool.
Awesome. Warren.
Yeah, I mean, I was tracking my time fairly closely for a while. And for me, it ended up being total IETF time is around 35 hours. If I add in the NOx stuff, it's more like 45 hours. But for me, the largest amount of time is just reading email and keeping up with sort of the general discussion. And I always had a tricky time figuring out when I account for my IESG time, do I include email or not? Because if I wasn't doing IESG stuff, I'd still be reading that mail. So that's not really AD time or IESG time. It is general IETF time. I will admit, though, there are a bunch of working groups that I probably wouldn't read all of their mail if I wasn't responsible for them in some way. So I think it depends wildly how efficient you are and how effective you are. I'm much less efficient than many. When Joel Yeagley was doing the Ops AD thing, he said it was taking him around 2 hours every day. So I think he's just more effective than I am, which is not surprising.
Yeah, the structure that I've been following is I try and condense my document review portion to like 1 or 2 days of review, and I actually read documents all the time as I see them coming up. And like you said, Warren, there are a lot of lists that I would read regardless. For me, though, it's difficult because I still read a lot of mail from the security area. So I have some security area lists that I still haven't managed to unsubscribe from yet. And I'm reading their lists as well as the art area lists for the groups that I'm responsible for. One thing that on the subject of email, it is one thing that can be kind of challenging is it can be kind of bursty. So you see, the agenda, there's going to be a certain number of documents, certain number of pages of documents you're going to have to review. And that's kind of a consistent thing. You can build a pretty good structure around that. But every now and then there'll be some topic on email that'll come up where there'll be a lot of interaction very quickly, and you'll have to kind of keep up with it or catch up in order to to have conversation after the fact. So I think email management might be actually what I consider to be the most difficult part of the art area position. I love the document review piece. I think it's, I enjoy that part, and it's easy to plan around and structure. But email management and coordination is tough. You can't control the pacing of how list discussions go.
Another thing which I found surprising is how often it's very difficult to predict if a discussion is going to be contentious or not, right? You'll have something where somebody will propose completely replacing IP with ATM, and everybody looking like, okay, whatever. And then there'll be something where somebody decides, let's change not even change the meaning of a particular flag, but when we write the flag, let's change it so we always write this flag in uppercase. And you're like, oh wow, everybody cares about that. The bike shedding effect is very real in some cases. And sorry, Francesca, I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. I just want to add to what Ori was saying that just to be fair, I don't follow all the mailing lists in real time. So I definitely keep up with my working group's mailing list. And I know that there is some expectations that from some people that maybe that we do that, but to be 100% honest, I do try to keep up with my mailing lists, but I don't do it in real time. So every week I'm keeping up, but I'm always lagging a little bit behind. And so, yeah, I just want to make that it would be great if you had the time to just be able to read it. And maybe you do, or I don't know, but
No. I think It's also true of the document review process. When you have this many pages to review and this regular recurrence, one of the things that I've enjoyed learning is like how to read more content with better comprehension in a shorter period of time. It is, you know, it's skimming in some places, right? And you have to do that for the volume of information that you're processing. So you get kind of good at figuring out where you need to slow yourself down and pay more attention, and where you can kind of zip through because you can see the kind of content you're processing it's going to be okay to go quickly through it. And the mailing lists are like that too. Like I think, aside from contentious issues, which is a topic I think we should click into with folks on the call here a little bit more. You know, how do you deal with contentious issues on a mailing list? How do you think about contention within the IETF and the role of the ISG? But yeah, I wouldn't want to give the position, or I wouldn't want to cause people to believe that they have to read every single word of every email on every mailing list they're responsible for. That would be a lot.
And Warren, feel free to just jump in. You don't need to.
Yeah, I didn't want to
yourself
step
in
on
the
people
queue.
accidentally.
Thanks.
I mean, I think that, as with anything, sort of you gain experience and skill with being an AD. So when I started off, for documents I would review, I would read every sentence, and at the end of the sentence, I would stop and say, did I understand what that meant? And then I would read the next sentence and do the same thing. And over time, one sort of learns the skill of, you read the document once, so you have a general idea what they're talking about. And then you go through and you sort of read it a second time with a bit more depth. There are also some set of documents which, honestly, I just skim. Like, we're allocating a new code point for an algorithm in a registry. Okay, great, whatever, right? That's nothing that affects ops, unless it's, you know, obviously ops related. But many of the documents are more process or something, in which case those don't necessarily require word by word comprehension from me. But also, I'm wondering if folk have any questions.
I'll jump in. First off, I do want to say I think the IETF needs to start relying on tooling more than just email lists. So Warren, your tracker for DNS op, which I think is a very, from the mailing list is very busy, but that tracker that you did in GitHub is fantastic. I would like to see much more of that. But getting to Ori's point about how to deal with contention, that to me is probably I think the biggest issue that the IETF has, more than trying to recruit people, because I think if you can make contention much more manageable, you'll have a lot more people who want to participate in the IETF. Well, that's just a theory. There maybe that there are people who participate in the IETF because they like the drama, but I don't think that's a winning formula. But dealing with contention, I'm curious. So like I'm in a couple of email discussions right now where it is somewhat a bit of bike shedding, where people are just like, well, I just don't like this. Okay, well, why not? And then there's no real follow-up that's a technical reason. It's all just, you know, feeling. So when I get into those kind of arguments, I kind of try to reduce it to, okay, what is the technical issue? And what I don't see is other participants doing that. Specifically, I don't see chairs helping out in those type of conversations either. Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious as to how you think we should approach those types of issues.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll jump in. It's difficult to give a good answer to that, but one thing that I noticed is the AD sort of desired expertise thing has a huge amount about, you know, the technical stuff you need to know. You should be an expert in the following 47 areas. You know, you need to know this, you need to have that much time. What I found is, in many cases, the role is actually more like, I'm not going to say kindergarten teacher, but not quite not. There is a fair bit of, you know, I understand that he said you're ugly, but last week you called his mama fat. So maybe we should just stop and take a break here. Everybody take a step back and let's have a discussion. Because as you say, many of the discussions don't necessarily seem to end up being about technical bits, right? A lot of it ends up, there is some underlying tension between participants. And so what I found is helpful is often to have a separate phone call with people who are involved in a contentious discussion. Sometimes, have a phone call with one, have a phone call with the other, and then arrange a joint phone call where people can get together and just talk it out. I found if I do that, it works much, much, much better on a VC type thing than on a phone thing, because having the most contentious people sort of see each other and remember that the person they're talking to is actually a person and not just somebody they can yell at on a mailing list makes a big difference. But again, I think a massive amount of the role is actually sort of personnel management or personal management. But sorry for just jumping in.
That's a great answer.
And when you say personal management, the big issue, you don't get a hierarchy, right? So if you are a manager, let's say in Google, the people reporting to you, you can have a staff, right?
Yep.
And tell them, yeah, please move. In this case, we have no such a thing. Yep. So it's only about respect.
Yeah, I keep saying, it's, if you're managing employees, you have both a carrot and a stick, right? There's if you don't do this, potentially you get fired. With managing volunteers, it's important to find a couple of things. One, a way where everybody understands that they're getting what they want, or they're both sort of equally unhappy in the case of compromise. But something that's really important is also managing to find a way that people can take a new position and still save face, right? Your standing or reputation in the IETF is actually important to people, because that's how you get people to care about your work, etc. So if you can find a way that if there's a contentious topic, both sides manage to come to some compromise, but they also don't have to look as though one side was wrong. I don't know a better way to word that, but a way to save face.
So that's getting at that, like how do you get to that point where both sides can save some face and they can change their position? And one of the approaches that I like to take with technical arguments where you have like a strong disagreement is to just try and get each side to understand the motivation behind the other side's position. And then you can say, well, I don't agree that these are the priorities that you should have, but I can see that if you do have these priorities, then it leads you to concluding this technical solution. And, we can just disagree that these are the right set of constraints to optimize around, perhaps as a group of engineers. But we can definitely agree that these are constraints that you're designing your system around. Like I can see that you're doing that. That's a fact. So being able to sort of separate how do I want the design to feel or to look versus, what's the approach that you're actually taking as you're building it can be helpful. Warren, I really like a lot of the answer that you gave, especially also like managing the flow of conversations, getting the right size group for the right stage in the conversation. I think it's good to sort of build up from smaller groups to larger for some of these things. And then there are certain discussions where you really can't take any sort of position unless it has had a really wide review, but you don't want to go straight to that position for something that's contentious.
Yeah. And I mean, there are also just sometimes some participants who just don't get on well with other participants. Sometimes because there's a feud that started 10, 12, 15 years ago. And, you can not always, but you can often predict that if a certain set of participants are in a discussion, the discussion is going to require some additional finessing. And sometimes also, I'm not going to say reinterpreting what the other person said, but taking what the other person said and sort of rephrasing it. So instead of, I understand Mary said this is the worst idea she's ever heard of. I suspect what she meant is, there are some refinements we could make. And when John said, "I wish you were dead," he probably, yeah, okay, maybe that one's a bit over the top. But there are sometimes ways to translate between people's positions.
Yeah. One of the techniques that I use is active listening. So it's like, repeating back, what I thought you heard, like you said. That's very useful when you're dealing with contentious issues.
Yeah. And that, sorry, don't mean to be hogging the conversation, but yeah, that's another thing where that works much better in person or, on VC or similar versus on email. It's difficult to restate someone's position in email without sounding like you're patronizing them. But again, I think I might be hogging the conversation.
Should I rephrase this as you speak too much?
Well, actually, Warren.
Joking, right? So the good point is that we are a team as well. So.
Actually, Warren, I'll disagree with you on the last bit that I found in some of the working groups that I've chaired, it's been really helpful to repeat in email what you think the point was in your own words. And that's turned out to bring out some misunderstandings. No, that's not what I meant at all. And then you have, so it's actually been important to do that by email as well.
But then it's rephrasing, right?
Yeah, it's by putting it in your own words, you make it clear to the person who was trying to communicate with you that the communication didn't properly happen and there needs to be more explanation.
Yeah, you're right. Another way to, or another advantage to doing that is you can restate the facts while removing all of the emotion from the discussion. And often there are really good facts, but they get hidden under the emotion. It is a lot trickier to do sometimes, but I think you're better at writing email than I am.
But the only other point I see in email is that obviously the IETF is vastly, let's say, North America and Europe. And sometimes interaction happens when you are sleeping. And then everything is burned when you came back. And then it's a bit too late, right? That's, kind of a challenging part for me.
That's the sort of the tone and structure of mailing list conversation is also, I think, it's a thing I've often wondered about. I grew up, on the internet, on forums, working on technologies, and there's a sort of a tone and language that we use as part of the internet community where I wonder sometimes, how is it to read this as I write my emails, especially around a technical topic. Sometimes I'll read over them again and I'll kind of restructure it to try and avoid colloquial language or especially if it's something I feel very strongly about, to try and think about a reader who maybe isn't a native English speaker as they read the email. And I think when you're dealing with contentious issues, that's an important thing to keep in mind as well, because sometimes the language that you're using isn't even going to be understood well, and so it's not the right language to choose in that situation. And that applies, sometimes it can be helpful to say to someone off list, I'm not sure if people are understanding what you're saying, when you say what you're saying on the list.
I want to pull this in a slightly different direction, that we spend a lot of time as area directors reading documents and having conversations about the reviews that we make and that kind of thing. And I think that tends to downplay what I think is probably the more important part of the job, which is managing the area and managing the working groups. And one of the things that I found when I was an area director is that some of the working group chairs wished I'd spent more time with them. And others, when I did spend time with them, had a "why are you bothering me" attitude. There's going to be a difference between, different working groups and their dynamics and different working group chairs. But I think figuring out the balance of the time you need to spend talking to your working group chairs and making them feel like they're doing the right thing or giving them guidance or that kind of thing. Is that it's hard to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, some of my working groups I have weekly meetings with, and then other ones I basically don't talk to them between meetings. And some of that is just, the work in the working group and the tone of the working group is very different. But some of it is also chair preference and what they like. I mean, BMWG, as my standard example, they completely run themselves. My input or discussion with them is in no way helpful because they're the subject matter experts and everything just works. Other working groups have a lot more contention in them because of the topic. And also some chairs just prefer more hands-on, whereas some of them view it as, why is my manager here looking over my shoulder? And that's never meant to be the feel, but they're like, if you're here, there must be a problem. And like, no, I just interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to be careful of when I became area director is I didn't want to feel like a helicopter manager. And there's a lot of work that chairs do that's important, and that an area director shouldn't be involved in. I feel like it's truly the chairs have a huge responsibility in managing the area, but at what point is it the right time to talk with your chairs about something that's happening within a working group without sounding like you're sort of taking over their position or their role?
I mean, honestly, I think in many ways, being a working group chair is much, much, much harder than being an AD. And ADs oversee a bunch more things. You need a much wider range of skill, but good working group chairs make it so the AD has almost nothing to do other than like, yes, here's a document. Obviously, you've done all of the right shepherd write-up and you've done all the checks because you always do. I'll click the go button. Now I'll click the next button. A lot of AD stuff really is administrivia and not technical knowledge.
So sorry to interrupt. I need to drop. We're at the.
We're at time. Also,
we're at time, but you feel free to go continue if you have the time. But yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
I need to leave as well.
Thank you.
Like
I'll close.
This should be in an informational document, maybe at some point.
You could write a draft.
Not 1st of April.
Nope. True. Right.
Thanks for putting this together, Ori.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna see what I can do about editing out the first part if there's anything. Thanks. It's good. Next time I'll be on time. See you all.
Talk to y'all later. Bye.